Welcome to the fascinating history of the Yuma Ferry, Fort Yuma, and the Yuma Massacre. Today, we'll explore the events that led to the establishment of this important military outpost on the Colorado River and the dramatic incidents that shaped its early years. Our story begins in February 1850, when John Glanton and his band of scalp-hunting renegades arrived at the Yuma Crossing of the Colorado River. They immediately saw an opportunity in the ferry operation run by Dr. A.L. Lincoln. Glanton, a blackleg lawyer from Tennessee with a ruthless reputation, announced himself as a new partner who would ensure the ferry was managed properly. Glanton and his gang had a dark history. They had previously been hired by the state of Chihuahua in Mexico to collect Apache scalps, with prices ranging from $25 for children to $100 for men. However, their greed led them to start scalping Mexican citizens as well. When this was discovered, they fled to California, where they saw the ferry as their next source of easy money. Under Glanton's control, the ferry rates became exorbitant. The gang used gangster tactics to collect fares and ruthlessly eliminated any competition. This created a situation that would eventually require government intervention and lead to the establishment of Fort Yuma. Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman, Alan. Please leave a like or comment. For further desert adventures, hit the subscribe button. The tension between the ferry operators and the local Yuma Native Americans came to a head on April 23, 1850. That morning, 3 white men from Glanton's band, William Carr, Marcus L. Webster, and Joseph A. Anderson, were suddenly attacked while cutting willow poles. They fled through the thickets, dodging arrows as they raced towards the ferry buildings. In a dramatic escape, the 3 men managed to reach a small boat and push off into the river. Little did they know, they were now the sole survivors of the Lincoln Glanton Ferry Company. Back at the ferry, Dr. Lincoln was asleep, while Glanton and his men were in a drunken stupor. Led by Chief Caballo Sin Pelo, the Yuma warriors attacked. Glanton was killed with a rock while Lincoln and the others were clubbed to death. The Native Americans even tied the company's dogs to the bodies of Lincoln and Glanton, burning them alive with the bodies in the ferry houses. This massacre was the culmination of growing tensions between the ferry operators and the Yuma tribe. The trouble had begun when a General Anderson from Tennessee refused to pay Glanton's high toll and instead built his own boat downstream. He then turned this ferry over to the Yumas with the agreement that they would charge fair rates. Glanton, unwilling to tolerate competition, had the Yumas' hired ferrymen killed and destroyed their ferry. When Chief Caballo Sin Pelo attempted to negotiate a compromise, Glanton made the fatal mistake of beating him and kicking him out. This insult to the Yuma leader sealed the fate of the white ferrymen on the Colorado. The 3 survivors, Carr, Webster, and Anderson, managed to escape downriver and eventually made their way to San Diego. On May 9, 1850, William Carr gave his account of the massacre to Alcalde Abel Stearns in Los Angeles. However, he didn't reveal all the details about the ferry company's mistreatment of the Yumas. The news of the massacre set wheels in motion. Governor Peter Burnett of California ordered the sheriffs of Los Angeles and San Diego counties to raise posses to establish law and order at the Colorado Crossing. A volunteer militia of 100 men was organized under Major General J.H. Bean and General Joseph C. Morehead. This expedition, however, was plagued with problems from the start. The organizers struggled to acquire mounts from local rancheros, who were skeptical of the state scrip offered as payment. When Morehead finally reached the Colorado, he found the Native Americans quiet and going about their business. This didn't sit well with some of the more aggressive militiamen, mostly immigrants from Arkansas and Missouri. Tensions escalated when a militiaman shot a Native American. Morehead's attempt at diplomacy backfired when he told the Yuma leaders that the white men had come to treat or fight. The Yuma war chief Pasquale responded that while he wouldn't treat, he was willing to fight if that's what the white men wanted. Shortly after, 150 Native Americans armed with bows and arrows attacked the volunteer camp. 20 Native Americans were killed in the ensuing battle. Morehead's force retreated to the stockade built by the ferry company, effectively ending what became known as the Morehead War. This ill-fated expedition cost the state of California a total of $76,588.26, a significant sum at the time. The failure of the volunteer militia led to a more organized military response. In July 1850, Major Samuel P. Heintzleman, stationed in San Diego with a regular Army unit, received orders to establish a permanent post at the junction of the Gila and Colorado rivers. However, it wasn't until November 27, 1850, that Heintzleman and his force of U.S. regulars established their post at the mouth of the Gila. The initial site of the camp was about 6 miles below the present Fort Yuma Indian School. In March 1851, the command moved to higher ground, to the very spot where the ill-fated Mission de la Concepcion had once stood. This site had a tragic history of its own. It was where Padre Francisco Garces had died on July 19, 1781 during the Yuma Revolt. As the soldiers under Major Heintzleman and Lieutenant Thomas W. Sweeney laid out the future Fort Yuma, they cleared away the crumbling adobe and charcoal debris from the destroyed mission. The commandant's headquarters was built on part of the old stone foundations of the mission. However, the new fort soon faced its own challenges. Provisions ran low and expected supply trains failed to arrive. In June 1851, Heintzleman was forced to fall back toward San Diego, leaving Lieutenant Sweeney with just 10 men to hold the post. Sweeney, a fighting Irishman who had lost an arm in the Mexican War, managed to keep the Native Americans at bay by threatening to use his 12-pound field piece. But as provisions dwindled further, even Sweeney was eventually forced to abandon the post. Before leaving, he cached surplus government property, which the Native Americans promptly dug up and appropriated as soon as the soldiers were out of sight. The main difficulty in maintaining the post was the challenge of supplying it. To address this, a depot of supplies was established at Vallecito, and arrangements were made to send provisions by steamer to the mouth of the Colorado, and then upstream by riverboats. On February 29, 1852, Heintzleman and Sweeney returned to reoccupy the fort. This time, it was to be a permanent post. The soldiers were dismayed to find that the Native Americans had burned their previous willow pole and mud quarters, meaning they had to start construction all over again. In March, Heintzleman decided to end all Native hostilities in the vicinity of Fort Yuma. He sent out 3 detachments to scour the country between the 2 rivers and to the north of the post. However, these operations were hampered by supply issues. When a steamer carrying badly needed supplies failed to arrive, Heintzleman sent Major Fitzgerald with 24 men downstream to investigate. This detachment was ambushed 22 miles below Yuma, resulting in 7 casualties. Despite these setbacks, by October 11, 1852, Major Heintzleman was able to issue an order announcing the termination of hostilities with the river tribesmen. He declared, "The recent expedition has resulted in their entire subjection to the United States authority. To continue this good understanding, the Native Americans must be treated with justice and kindness." Although major Native American troubles had ceased, the garrison at Fort Yuma faced other challenges. On October 26, 1852, a fire broke out in the fort, destroying several buildings including the commissary storehouse. The blaze threatened to ignite barrels of cannon powder and boxes of ammunition. In a dramatic moment, Major Heintzleman and Lieutenant Sweeney rushed into the burning building to save the explosives, with only a few brave soldiers following them. As if the fire weren't enough, the post was rocked by a severe earthquake on November 29th. The tremors were so bad that sentries abandoned their posts to huddle on the parade ground. Gigantic cracks opened in the ground, and the river behaved erratically. Relief came on December 3rd when the steamer Uncle Sam arrived with about 20 tons of commissary stores. This was the first steamer to navigate the river all the way to Fort Yuma, marking a significant improvement in the fort's supply situation. After the fire, efforts began to build a more substantial Fort Yuma. Adobe buildings were started, but progress was slow. It wasn't until late in 1854 that a large construction force arrived from San Diego to build the post under the supervision of D.B. Kurtz. By June 1855, work was well underway, continuing at a brisk rate despite the notorious Yuma heat. The heat at Fort Yuma was legendary, giving rise to several tall tales. One story claimed that a dog once ran across the parade ground on 3 legs, yelping at every jump because the ground was so hot. Another tale suggested that hens at Yuma laid hard-boiled eggs. Perhaps the most outrageous story was about an old soldier who died at Fort Yuma and went to hell, only to return the next night to get his blankets because hell was cooler. Despite these exaggerations, the heat was indeed extreme. On June 16, 1859, the thermometer registered 119 degrees Fahrenheit, the hottest temperature recorded in 9 years. By the outbreak of the Civil War, Fort Yuma had become a substantial post. It no longer relied on hauling water by cart from the river. The buildings were made of adobe, plastered inside and out. There were about 23 structures surrounding the flat, barren parade ground. In October and November 1861, redoubts, semicircular outposts with earthen embankments, were constructed to improve the fort's defenses. As the Native American threat diminished and the surrounding area became more settled, Fort Yuma's military importance began to wane. On July 17, 1884, the acting Secretary of War advised President Chester A. Arthur that Fort Yuma was no longer necessary as a military reservation. On July 22, 1884, the President transferred Fort Yuma to the Department of the Interior, and on July 28, an official order informed the Army that the post had ceased to exist. Fort Yuma's story didn't end there, however. On March 5, 1892, it became part of the Yuma Native American Reservation, bringing its history full circle. The fort, originally established in response to conflicts with the Yuma tribe, was now part of their protected lands. The story of Fort Yuma is a microcosm of the broader narrative of the American West. It encompasses themes of frontier justice, conflict between settlers and Native Americans, the challenges of establishing civilization in harsh environments, and the eventual pacification and settlement of the region. The fort's history reminds us of the complex and often violent processes that shaped the American frontier. It stands as a testament to the resilience of both the soldiers who manned its walls and the Native Americans who called the surrounding lands home. Today, the site of Fort Yuma continues to overlook the Colorado River, a silent witness to the turbulent events that once unfolded along its banks. Thank you for joining us on this historical journey. Please leave a like or comment. Hit the subscribe button for more desert romps. Happy trails!